Good afternoon and welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Ms. Axelson, can you please take roll?
Assembly members Anderson, present. Carter, present. Cole, here. Hardy, here. Howdigi, Kasama, Miller, here. Monroe Moreno, O'Neill, here. Roth, here. Torres Fawcett, here. Yeager, Urick, here. Chair Marzola.
Here. Can you please mark Assembly Member Monroe Moreno absent excused, and please mark members present once they arrive. Welcome everyone that is joining us here in Carson City, anyone joining us in Las Vegas through video conference, and anyone tuning over the internet. Today we will begin with an overview of the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation. Then we will hear three bills: Assembly Bill 12, Assembly Bill 21, and Assembly Bill 68. Before we get started, I would like to make some housekeeping announcements. Members of the public may provide testimony in various ways, of which are all listed in the agenda. When testifying, please turn the microphone on to speak and off to listen. If you have handouts for the committee, please provide 20 copies to the committee secretary prior to your testimony. In addition, exhibits and amendments must be submitted electronically as a PDF file to our committee manager no later than noon on the business day before our meeting. Committee information is available through the legislature's website. You may also watch our meetings through the legislature's YouTube. We ask that public comments be kept to 2 minutes so that anyone interested on giving public comment can be accommodated. Public comment may be submitted either in writing in addition to testifying or in lieu thereof. Written public comment will be submitted before, during, or up to 24 hours before or after our meeting has adjourned. I expect courtesy and respect in all our interactions as always. Finally, please put all of your electronic devices, especially your cell phones, on silent. With that, we will move on to our first agenda item. We will have an overview of the Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation. Joining us today is the Director, Christopher Sewell, Troy Jordan, Deputy Director, and David Schmidt, Chief Economist. When you guys are ready, you may begin. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon. For the record, Christopher Sewell, Director, Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation, also known as Dieter. A couple of house cleaning items. Our presentation is, I think it's 48 pages long. I will guarantee you, and my administrators and my staff know, that we will not go over all of the all 48 pages. A lot of that is for your information, and there are page numbers in the upper right. If you do have questions, we can both go to the same page very easily. But they all know that this is a brief overview, and they all know to make it brief. I know some of you have already been through some of this. My apologies, but it's always fun to talk about Dieter. It's a great place to work, and something that helps a lot of Nevadans. Dieter's vision is empowering Nevadans to realize their potential through meaningful work, building economic prosperity in every community. That's very important. We are in communities, small communities and large communities. We have numerous employee NV offices in Las Vegas and in Reno. We also have employee NV offices in our smaller towns. We just opened up one in Fernley. And we have employee NV offices also out in Ely and Elko. So, and every 4.0, almost in between. So we're here to help Nevadans and make Nevadans enrich their lives through better jobs and better training. And for those that, through no fault of their own, a lifeline through unemployment insurance. I'm not going to go over our FTE counts. You can see that, and our org chart is on page 5. I will say, a few years ago when I took over, our vacancy rate was over 30%, close to about 35% for our employee FTE. We're down at 8%. And it's about almost 1,000 FTE. And Dieter is a great place to work now. Through the pandemic, we were a 4-letter word, so to speak, and we've passed that. We're now concentrating on workforce and getting people better jobs and jobs. So before I move on, and I know I've said this before, and I always say this, I have a wonderful team. Some of them are behind me. There's a few at the table down in Las Vegas. If it wasn't for them, Dieter wouldn't be where they are today. I'm just a temporary captain of the ship. They do the real job, and their teams do the real job. And you're going to be hearing from some of them because you probably don't want to hear me speak anymore, just as a director. So I'm going to turn this over to my administrator of our rehabilitation division, Drazen Elise.
Thank you, Director, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Drazen Ellis, and I serve as the administrator of the Rehabilitation Division. In short, Rehab Division assists individuals with disabilities to obtain economic independence. That's accomplished either through assistance with employment, which is our Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation, Bureau of Services to the Blind and Visually Impaired, and Business Enterprise in Nevada program, or assistance with obtaining Social Security benefits, which is done through Bureau of Disability Education. In this presentation, I will focus on the work and role of the vocational rehabilitation, which is the BVR and Bureau of Services to the Blind and Visually Impaired, who provide essential services necessary to assist individuals with disabilities to work in competitive integrated employment and achieve self-sufficiency. This is accomplished through Title IV, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014, which reauthorized Rehab Act of 1973. In this portion, I will just, in my portion of the presentation, I'll just focus on I will pause on a few slides just to highlight some of the work that we're doing. But through these slides, there's a lot of information about the manner in which we provide services and a few client success stories as well. So in essence, the role of the VR is to help people with disabilities find jobs. On this slide, you can see some of the key statistics. In state fiscal year 2024, we have served 7,339 clients, which is over 1,200 client increase from state fiscal year 23, with 481 of those individuals achieving competitive integrated employment and an average wage of $17.74 an hour. Over the past 3 years, we have also seen a historically high increase in new applications for our services, which have been consistently increasing to now over 229% of our 2021 application levels. Also, because of the complexity and individualized nature of the services that we provide, our cases are open an average of 645 days. The other set of services that VR provides is the pre-employment transition services, and these are services provided to students with disabilities ages 14 through 21. We are required to reserve 15% of our federal grant on pre-employment transition services. On this slide, you can see the types of services that we provide and the numbers of students that participated in them in 2023. In 2023, we served around 2024. We served around 2,100 students, and this is doubling the number that we've served in the prior state fiscal year, which was a little over 1,000 students. One project that I would like to highlight is our Nevada TRIP project, which we are accomplishing with the Nevada Department of Education and 8 other partners, which include independent living centers, Carson, Humboldt, and White Pine School Districts, Nevada PEP, and UNR's Nevada Center for Excellence in Disability. We have partnered to create a website and essentially map out services that are available for students with disabilities and their families ages 10 through 21, and also connect them with those services. The website is specifically designed to help children and youth with disabilities to navigate the road from elementary to high school, then graduation, education and training, employment, and ultimately independence. It is scheduled to have a soft launch in April of 2025 in Carson, Humboldt, and White Pine County School Districts. The project is ahead of schedule. 10 other states have received the same grant, and Nevada is currently leading the way as having the most comprehensive product and the first one scheduled to launch. I would also just like to pivot back briefly to another one of rehab agencies, which is Bureau of Disability Adjudication. Next. And highlight just a few accomplishments that this agency has achieved. BDA has received a number of recognitions for individual staff and as well as the agency from SSA administration, including the SSA commissioner. Also, on the right-hand side, you can see some of the statistics with the same staffing levels that we've had over the last few years. The productivity of the agency has significantly increased. We have processed over 29,000 claims, which is compared to a little over 19,000 claims 5 years ago, a big accomplishment. During the same time, not only that we have served more clients, but we have also reduced their claim time processing time to 56 days below national average and improved the quality and accuracy of the claims to 96.4%, which is also significantly exceeding national average. And on this slide, this is in kind of conclusion, these last couple of slides. So here you can just see some of the most compelling reasons why VR services are so important. One is that people with disabilities make up nation's largest minority group, as well as the only group that any one of us can become a part of at any time. People with disabilities also have significantly higher poverty rates, significantly lower employment rates, and earn a lot less than their non-disabled peers. And where our service is located. So VR Nevada has 13 physical locations throughout Nevada. Applying for our services is very easy and streamlined. Constituents can just go to our website, click on the application, which is prominently displayed on our front page, or just scan the QR code that you can find on here. And with that, that concludes my portion. It is my pleasure now to introduce our next presenter, Christine Nelson, Administrator of Employment Security Division.
Thank you, Administrator Ellis, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Christine Nelson. I serve as the Administrator of the Employment Security Division at DETR. Today, I'll provide a high-level overview, a programmatic overview of DETR's Employment Security Division that will hopefully help you inform your constituents when they're coming to you asking questions. And then I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have. The Employment Security Division, which I'll refer to as ESD, oversees 2 large program areas: unemployment insurance and workforce development. This slide shows you the executive branch budget accounts that administer those programs. Slide. Unemployment insurance is a joint state and federal program that provides cash benefits to eligible workers. As the designated grantee, DETR receives federal funding from the U.S. Department of Labor to administer UI programs in the state, and the UI taxes that are collected fund the UI trust fund that then provide those benefits to claimants. At a 10,000-foot level, the diagram that you see on this slide demonstrates the life of a UI claim. I thought this information would be helpful for you when you're meeting with constituents to help them guide them through what the process is, the days that their claim may be in. The major initiative that the UI program in this biennium is the system modernization to the state's new UI system, also known as NUI. UI tax launched in February of 2024, and UI benefits is on track and on budget to launch in summer of 2025. Slide. ESD's second large program area is workforce development, which includes the Office of Workforce Innovation, also known as OWIN. as well as a number of federal and state workforce and training programs that ESD administers that provide a combination of workforce and training services for citizens of the state. As Nevada State Workforce Department, DETR is designated and funded through the Department of Labor, as well as the Governor's Office at a state level to administer Nevada's workforce and training programs. Said programs include, but are not limited to, WIOA's Title I Adult, Dislocated Worker, and Youth Programs, Veterans and Reentry Workforce and Training Programs, Employment Services Programs that are funded through WIOA's Title III Wagner-Pizer Act that fund the employee and V-hubs that Director Sewell mentioned. These hubs provide employer programs, training resources and supports, vocational classroom training, academic enhanced training, and training-related expenses such as work cards, tools, safety equipment, uniforms, and anything that an individual needs to retain or maintain work. Slide. Workforce programs administered through the state's 46 statewide employee and V-hubs are operated by ESD staff and the One-Stop American Job Centers, which are operated by the 2 local workforce development boards, Nevada Works in the north and Workforce Connections in the south. Accomplishments made in workforce in this biennium that are listed on this slide include approximately $40 million in obligations made from the federal WIOA funding, which provided supports for the 2 local workforce development boards, Owens operations, and workforce projects which include but aren't limited to youth hubs, disconnected youth and CTE student organizational programs, employer-connected training and industry sector partnership programs that were administered through the Rotaries and Chambers of the state, post-secondary workforce programs administered through Nevada's colleges, and reentry workforce programs. In addition to this, the DETR ESD also obligated approximately $22 million from the state's Career Enhancement Program, which provides ongoing training program support such as the Early Childhood Development Training and apprenticeship programs administered through Nevada's colleges, the Teacher Internship Career Pipeline Training Program, which we braided funding with and collaborated with Nevada's Department of Education on, incumbent worker training programs, the Nevada Career Explorer program administered through Nevada's libraries, and the Up Next Nevada statewide career pathways training program that is being administered through Nevada Works, which is the local workforce board in the north. Slide. This slide depicts the positive outcomes achieved in these workforce and training programs in 2024, demonstrating that these programs work for Nevadans. Slide. The next 6 slides, slide 28 through 33, are testimonials of individuals and businesses that received services through our programs, demonstrating the need and successes of the Employee and V-Hubs workforce system. In respect of time, I won't read through these, but I'm providing these to the committee so that they can see what the citizens and the employers of the state are saying about these Employee and V-Hubs. Slide 34. The next 3 slides, 34 through 36, provide resources that inform you where you can find ESD's programs and resources for your constituents. Slide 37. Moving on to the Office of Workforce Innovation, also known as OWIN, I'll be presenting for Executive Director Marshall Sneed this afternoon. And this slide is a visual representation of OWIN and its placement within Nevada's workforce system. DETR is excited to reintroduce you to OWIN, which was created by Governor Sandoval in 2016 through an executive order, then codified into state statute NRS 232 in 2017, and has been under DETR's administration since 2021. OWIN's charge is to be the coordinator needed for the facilitation of the workforce system, and over the last 6 months, Executive Director Sneed has restructured the office and has focused OWIN on situating itself as the hub at the center of the workforce wheel, driving coordination amongst various workforce agencies, entities, stakeholders, and partners to foster collaboration for workforce in the state. OWIN has transitioned out of the programmatic grantee role that it became over the last several years and will not be the grantee or co-grantee on any future federal grants. Rather, OWIN will be, again, the convener, the facilitator, and the coordinator of workforce activities that braid funding, resources, and efforts across Nevada's workforce system to ensure Nevada's workforce entities are aligned and working together to move our state's workforce initiatives forward. Slide. In this role, Owen has made great strides, some of which are outlined on this slide. Owen continues to move the state's workforce inventories forward, ensuring development and continuous improvement in the state's longitudinal data system, also known as NPower, as well as ensuring the state's industry-recognized credentials and in-demand occupation lists, and the talent pipeline website that's been updated and accessible for Nevadans. Owen is also moving the needle forward on Assembly Bill 428, which was passed in the 2023 legislative session, and tasked Owen with establishing and administering career pathway demonstration programs and creating work-based learning opportunities for the state. Owen has identified the 3 priority industries as education, healthcare, and clean energy, and is conducting monthly stakeholder meetings to ensure alignment to move this initiative forward. Finally, Owen has reestablished the state's Careers Pathways website, which was formerly known as lifeworksnv.org. And the new website is referenced on this slide at the bottom, which provides a career pathway and work-based learning hub for Nevadans. This concludes my presentation of the Employment Security Division, and I'll now turn the presentation over to the NERC Administrator, Patrice Perez.
Thank you, Administrator Nelson. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Patrice Perez, and I serve as the Administrator for the Nevada Equal Rights Commission, also known as NERC. NERC is a neutral fact-finding agency that investigates complaints of discrimination in employment, as well as discrimination in housing and places of public accommodation. Our agency also conducts outreach and provides training to Nevada businesses. NERC works also with the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC, and through our work share agreement with them, we receive credit for each employment case that we close. So to give an idea of how we process our claims, a claimant who feels that they were discriminated against can file a complaint by visiting our website and registering online. Upon completing their registration, they complete a pre-screening and they answer some additional questions pertaining to their particular situation. Our charge is then formalized, which means that we write up the charge and we send it to the charging party, who then signs it. The charge then gets served on the respondent, whether it be an employer, a housing facility, or a place of public accommodation. So besides having investigators, NERC also has a full-time mediator. And some claims go through this mediation process. It's a voluntary program, and then depending on whether the parties want to agree to mediate, they can go through that program. If a mediation is not held, or it is held but it's unsuccessful, a claim is then investigated by the investigators in our agency. The investigator will make a determination upon the conclusion of the investigation, a determination of probable cause or no probable cause. When there's a finding of no probable cause, the case is then closed, and the claimant is afforded an opportunity to appeal their decision. In employment cases where there is no probable cause finding, the charging party can ask for a reconsideration of the finding with the NERC administrator. But they also get a second chance of appealing that determination by asking for a substantial weight review with the EEOC. In cases where there is a probable cause finding, the case is then submitted to our Deputy Attorney General, who reviews the case and will either agree or disagree with the investigator's finding. In those cases where the DAG, or the Deputy Attorney General, agrees with the probable cause finding, we then attempt to settle the claim through conciliation. With employment cases, if a conciliation fails, the case will be forwarded to the EEOC for further processing. So the EEOC can either try conciliation, they can file suit on behalf of the charging party, or they can issue the claimant a right to sue notice, which then allows the party to file in court, whether it be in federal or state court. I stated earlier that we have settlements, either through mediation and or conciliation. And for state fiscal year 2024, NERC was able to settle cases and give back a little over $1.4 million back to Nevadans. So we're happy that we can do that for our citizens. We do have 2 offices. There's one in Las Vegas and one in Reno. That concludes my presentation on what NERC does, and I'd like to pass over to Deputy Director Troy Jordan.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Troy Jordan, Deputy Director of DETR. I'm on page 41 of your packet. I'm just giving you an overview of our Administrative Services Division, which is overseen by our other Deputy Director, Josh Marhevka, who unfortunately was ill today. But DETR is almost like a small state in the sense we have our own financial management, our own human resources, our public information officer, operations management, which takes care of our buildings, some of which are owned by entities within DETR, an internal audits division, our information technology division, or IT, and our Research and Analysis Bureau, which, as many of you know, is headed up by our Chief Economist, Dave Schmidt. With that, I will turn the mic over to our administrator of our ITD division, our Information Technology, Carl Stanfield.
Hello. Excuse me. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Carl Stanfield. I am the ITD administrator at DETR. I want to talk to you a little bit about our operation and how we work. Do you have the slide? Okay. On this slide, you see 4 different functional areas that we work out of. First one is Information Systems Applications, Customer and Operations Support Services, Technical Services, and the IT Project Management Office. Each one of these areas have several underlying layers that make up the support structure for all of DETR. Slide. This slide is informational. It looks like you got the wrong one. I've got slide 43. There we go. Slide 43 is a budgetary informational slide. It shows some of the decision unit enhancements that we're requesting. Slide. This slide right here shows some of our accomplishments over the past year, one of them being the migration of UINV to the cloud along with legacy applications. This increased our efficiency and our scalability, as well as our network uptime for all constituents throughout Nevada. We are also implementing artificial intelligence in the benefits appeals unit. This right here will provide staff members internally with a tool that will help them better do their jobs in a more timely manner. And this in turn also serves the citizens of Nevada in a much more efficient way. We have improved our cybersecurity posture at DETR, which in the past has been something that was a little neglected, but that's allowed us to manage our cybersecurity in near real time, avoiding threats as they come in. Instead of being reactive, we're now proactive to these. Slide. As Administrator Nelson mentioned earlier, our UINV project is currently on time and on budget. Phase 1 rolled out last year in February and on the 19th. It is exactly 1 year to the day. And as of last Friday, we had collected $61 million in taxes up to this time. Phase 2 rolls out in the summer this year, and it is also on time, on budget, and everything, all systems go. That concludes my presentation. So at this time, let me introduce you to David Schmidt, our Chief Economist.
Thank you. My name is David Schmidt. I'm the Chief Economist for the Research and Analysis Bureau in DETR. In short, what we do is we work with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics to produce and publish labor market information. The data that we have can be found on our website, nevadaworkforce.com. We also work to make it available in several other formats as well. We've also been collaborating with the Office of Workforce Innovation with the NPower program, that's NPWR. This is a state's longitudinal data system to link data between the wage records that DETR has, as well as records from the Department of Education, Nevada System of Higher Education, and other agencies to allow better research into what makes programs effective, what happens to people as they move through the various agencies that are participants in the program. You can find some of the research that's been funded through the NPower program, as well as the reports that are made available at npwr.gov, or npwr.nv.gov, /reports or /research, depending on what you want to see. Those are links are in the presentation here. We've also been working to see how we can make data that we have better available at local and meaningful contexts. One way that we've done this is through the reports that we recently put up on our website, which is DEETR in your district. This takes data from the Unemployment Insurance Program as well as the state's workforce programs and pulls data from the Census Bureau and brings them down to the legislative district level. So if you go to nevadaworkforce.com/legislative-districts, you can see these reports. There's also a link in the presentation here. The next two slides show a snapshot of what you would see if you go to this page, looking at Assembly District 21. The first tables here look at demographic groups within the district that have either high unemployment compared to the rest of the district or low labor force participation. Both of these measures are pretty important. High unemployment would be people who are looking for work but not finding it. Low participation would be people who have higher than average rates of non-participation. They're neither working nor looking for work. And you can see the tables here and the information that's highlighted. If you go to our website, you can pull up the information for your own particular districts. The next slide looks at some of our administrative data. Again, looking at the district level to see how many people are claiming unemployment benefits. What does that mean in terms of dollars that are paid out? How many people are participating in or engaged with the workforce system in your district? This is an attempt to highlight at a more local level, because sometimes we'll have statewide numbers and they say, here's what's going on in the state. But to narrow the data down to a neighborhood or a city or a county can often help to make the different kinds of decisions that are necessary to serve the people in the state. With that, I'm happy to hand it back over to our director.
Thank you. For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of DEETR. Administrator Nelson highlighted a couple of things about putting money out on the street for the workforce. I want to go over a couple of those highlights. Teacher stipends. I'm married to a teacher, and one thing I found out after being married for a couple of years is when you graduate with your teaching degree, you have to take the last semester off, basically. That is what you have to do, because you have to go into a classroom and teach without being paid. That's tough for a lot of individuals. And so what we've done is we've, in coordination with the Department of Education, helped fund teacher stipends. We just put $1.1 million into the program again. We funded that a little over $2 million last session. And so that's one of the things that we're doing. One of the other opportunities we're involved in is Hope for Prisoners down in southern Nevada. We're working with for training at Florence McClure Women's Facility in southern Nevada. We have child care worker training programs at select NSHE institutions for those individuals that want to have training that are going into wanting to become part of child care. And so we've helped fund that program. We've also worked with the Aladdin Chamber of Commerce on training some small businesses on how to uptick their business and what they need to do if they need our help on finding workers. We are also reached out this year to a service organization, the Sparks Rotary. And part of that agreement with the Sparks Rotary is we will match what they raise internally to help the middle school and high school in Sparks for their training programs for students. And part of that money went to one of the middle schools that had a metal lathe. I think it was from World War II that those kids were working on. That's not going to help them. They might get the basics of what a lathe does, but it's not going to really help them and guide them. Is this something that we really want to do? Modern lathes are all electronic. We help fund that. And so that middle school has a true lathe that can help with training our young people. I've said this before. Our youth are 25% of the population. they're 100% of our future. And I abide by that. And it is very true. And we are reaching down into the high schools as much as we can, and in the middle schools. We also are working with the Boys and Girls Club that was just approved by the Inter Finance Committee last week or the week before. So we're involved in the community at the lowest level that we can be, helping as many people as we can help. Just want to close. Ironically, and I don't know if I want to bring this up, but today is actually International Tug of War Day. And I say that not that we want to be tugging of war over things. Dieter is here to help constituents. Dieter is here to help Nevadans. That's what we do. And I want to continue the partnership that Dieter has with all of you, because it's very important that we maintain that partnership and not have a tug of war, not have all those things, unless I guess it's in the middle of summer and we have water and beach balls and everything else. That's fun. But we rely on you and your help. And that's what I want to continue. You heard from a lot of my staff. I encourage you to reach out to my staff. You don't have to go through me. I'm not that kind of a director. Please reach out to the staff. If you have a question about a unemployment number or something in your district or a UI question, reach out to my staff. They know the answer a lot better than I probably do. And I encourage you to do that. So, Madam Chair, we stand ready for any questions that any of the members may have.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I always find it very informative, so I do love it. And I do love how you start by thanking your team, and that's very important, right? Because where would we be without them? So with that, committee members, are there any questions? Oh, Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I was just reminiscing, Director, I think it was your wife's class who sung Home Means Nevada back in, I can't remember, it wasn't this session, but last session, either the State of the State or it was the first day of session, so that was a wonderful experience. And I want to thank you as well. I mean, I certainly appreciate the importance of quality staff and people around you. They make a world of difference. And I think for you in particular, a lot of times when folks come to your agency, they have it in a real bad way, right? They need help, whether it's unemployment, whether it's training. And so, I think that having that kind of a cohesive team really helps, because you really are in a customer service industry, and not always with customers who are happy with what's going on. So the question I have there, we talked about this a little bit before in some of our other hearings about offices being open and that. And I'm not going to say it's a massive amounts of people, but I have heard from constituents that they just have a hard time sometimes getting their phone calls to get answered, and particularly when it comes to the appeals process, which I know we're working through that process. And so I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, what you guys have done to kind of speed up some of those wait times on the phone. I know we've all experienced that in our own lives when we call somewhere and you're sort of on hold forever with that annoying music. And so if you could just talk, I know we've made a lot of strides since the pandemic when we had to rehaul everything, but an update on how that's coming along, and if you think there are further improvements that can or should be made.
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of Dieter. With the NUI system rolling out in summer, it's going to probably cut down a lot of those phone calls coming in, because a lot of those things then will be automated, because this current system, UINV, is an extremely old system, and it's clunky, it's not user-friendly, it's probably one of the worst UI systems I've seen. And so I think in summer, that's probably going to help quite a bit. Our phone system, We just recently signed a contract with a new contract with the provider to upgrade that, because I know that's a problem. And we are very well aware of that. We're trying to do some things in between getting the newer system upgraded. When you call into a customer service line, a lot of times you'll get, your wait time is 15 minutes. Well, unfortunately, we don't do that right now, and I'm going, why? That's why I have gray hair. We're working on actually adding that into the system. One of the reasons why we have online and telephonic filing of unemployment claims is early in 2000s, the Department of Labor gave the state a choice, 3 choices. You can only have 2. Either have your citizens file online, on the phone, or in person. And at the time, the leadership said, we're going to do online and on the phone. And during the pandemic, when we all saw the problems that created, but I think we'd actually would have been in worse shape if we would have had in person. We would have had probably not just blocks long of lines, but miles. And we're fixing it. And I can tell you, Deputy Director Jordan has some information on some of the items that I know you were concerned with, if you want to finish answering that question.
Sure. Troy Jordan, Deputy Director, for the record, through you, Madam Chair, to the Speaker to answer his question.
You can go direct.
Thank you. One of the things, thank you for the email, by the way, I appreciated that. One thing that I felt in reading your email, the first thing I said was we need to get the message out there further. That was something I took to heart immediately, was a lot of those problems that had come to you were solvable if they had been given the information. But one thing I want to assure you is they can go to any employee NV hub and drop off documents. That's a fallacy. If that happened, I would love to know about it immediately so we can remedy that situation with training. But they can go in anywhere to drop off those documents. The second thing is we have added ID.me kiosks to nearly all of our hubs so that they can get through that process quicker. This is especially done, we got a grant from the feds to do it in the rurals that we have expended, so it is expended. There's no issue with current situations on that. It is done, it is spent. The kiosks have been installed. But they can also go there to file claims in certain hubs, not all of them, because we have some hubs that are in libraries, some hubs that are in, there's one youth hub that's actually in a gym currently. It's the first of its kind. It opened in Las Vegas last year in partnership with us in Nevada Workforce Connections. But the main hubs that you guys will remember as Job Connects, the career hubs, such as Maryland Parkway, North Las Vegas, and Henderson, have those computers available to them during our business hours to file those unemployment claims. One reason that traditionally we have not had someone there to walk them through it as much is in 2000, the Department of Labor made us choose between 2 of the 3 being in person on paper, over the internet, or over the phone, and Nevada chose over the phone and over the internet. I will echo the sentiments of the director that NUI is going to automate a lot of these things. There's going to be a chat bot. There's going to be instructions they can pull down, things like that. So we hope to alleviate that. But we will always have our hubs available for them to drop off paperwork, because most of that paperwork is not the claim itself. It's backup documents in trying to prove up their claim or their side of the story.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that information, and thank you for being responsive. And, I guess we'll just sort of wait to see how the new system works. I think one of the frustrations, of course, when someone's having to wait on the phone or can't figure out how to process a claim on the internet, their first instinct is, I want to go talk to somebody, right? I want to go to an office and talk to a human being. And I understand the situation you're in where you had to choose among 2. But if I could offer a couple of recommendations, you mentioned one of them, and if someone knew what the wait time was, I mean, even if it's long, right? If the wait time's 3 hours and you hear that on the phone, you can kind of put your phone down and go do something else for 3 hours, right? Rather than sit there. But I know I've called places as well, and they have a system, and don't know if this is practical with what you guys are doing, but they'll have a system that says the wait time is really long. Would you like us to call you back? when someone is available. Now, I gotta say, I don't always do that because I'm a little suspicious, like maybe I don't get a call back, but the times that I have, it really has worked, right? And so that allows someone to sort of get in the line and not have to wait. Again, I don't know if that's gonna be realistic with the system that you have, but I do think it's something to look at because it is a way that someone feels like, well, I'm in the line, I don't have to wait on the phone, I can go about my day, and maybe would eliminate some of that frustration. So we just ask if that's possible. I think it would be a nice feature for folks.
For the record, Chris Sewell, Director of Dieter, through you, I can go direct, sorry, Mr. Speaker. That is something that the new phone system is going to probably be able to do. In the meantime, I have my ITD administrator working on just at least the wait time part of that, and so that way it does solve that issue.
Committee members, any additional questions? I don't see any.
Thank you very much for allowing us to give you a brief overview of Dieter.
You look surprised. You were very thorough, so we appreciate it. And with that, I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 12. This measure revises requirements for obtaining judicial review of a decision of the Board of Review concerning a claim for unemployment benefits. Mr. Jordan, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Troy Jordan, Deputy Director. This is a bill that was asked for by the Employment Security Division Legal Department. Unfortunately for me, prior to becoming Deputy Director, for those of you that don't know me, I was the Senior Legal Counsel to the Employment Security Division, so I'm carrying the weight on this bill today for all of you, and will be available for questions after the short presentation. So we first start with a slide, please. He's got it up. All right. We have two bills today. I'll only be talking about AB 12. I'll be turning AB 21 over to David Schmidt at the appropriate time. But this bill, we believe, will provide more clarity for our constituents and the claimants, as they are known in the unemployment world, of those seeking unemployment who need judicial review. I wanted to echo the speaker's sentiment that when these people come to this point, they're in a bad way. They're looking for resources and things like that. But these people that come to these petitions, most of the time have been denied 3 times for unemployment. The likelihood that they're getting this is not, and this is the last stop. And as a member of the State Bar and a lawyer for the last 21 years, I want to make sure that their due process is protected. And that one of the reasons that I was happy to present this bill today is that it provides clarity of what I would call the harsh system that we have in place for petitions for judicial review. And this amends the section to make sure that they're aware that the 45-day service provision is basically absolute at this point, based on recent Supreme Court history. So I had a slide, and I'm going to do this, hopefully you're happy with this. I had originally, because we did this separately from the presentation, had a background on unemployment. I think you heard enough of that in our presentation, but I just want to emphasize the bottom is that it is an eligibility-based program that has strict requirements, including being able and available to work, searching for work, and reporting all your income if you happen to be partially employed. Slide. The Supreme Court has laid down many cases over the years, but the main one I wanted to emphasize here was, in fact, that unemployment benefits have their roots in legislative enactments. They are not an inherent right of the people, and hence the legislature can lay down any reasonable or non-discriminatory conditions that may fit the eligibility or procedure. That is on this body, and you have done so numerous times throughout the years. Slide. So with that, this service provision that we're talking about, NRS 612, in NRS 612, it's 530, was originally used in conjunction with NRS 233B, and the 233B provisions apply to generally to agencies, but our Chapter 612 controls. And slide. There is what I would call a tortured history of this service provision. In 2012, there was Washoe County versus Otto, in which a Washoe County attorney had failed to name some of the parties in a petition for judicial review in which the government was appealing. The Supreme Court found the provision in 233B to be mandatory, what we call mandatory and jurisdictional, meaning if you didn't do it right within the time allowed to file, you were out, meaning your case was dismissed. That held for 7 years, and it was most of the legal community viewed that as mandatory and jurisdictional, not only for the provision that was in the Otto case, but all the way down to number 5, which was the service provision. Sometime around 2018, and I was the opposing lawyer on this case, 2 attorneys from Minnesota representing Spar Industries frankly made a mistake. They looked at the Rules of Civil Procedure and not the Administrative Procedures Act and thought they could serve us in 120 days and not 45. They took it up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court kind of split the baby in that sense, in the sense that Spar ruled that because the 612 chapter, specifically 612.530, was silent on the service provision, that the NRS 233 controlled, and because subsection 5, the service section, said that it could be excused for good cause, number 5 was not mandatory and jurisdictional. It had a way out. In response, as part of a larger bill, SB 3 to the 32nd special session to this legislature, we amended NRS 612.530 to add in the 45-day provision back into our statute. It passed unanimously in the Senate, had only 1 negative vote in this assembly. Since then, there have been numerous attempts to override that 45 days. The first that went to the Supreme Court was Chopra, in which the district judge at the time, the Honorable Beta Yeager, agreed with me that based on the amendment and the language in Spar that said because our provision was silent, it wasn't mandatory, but now I had amended it so it was no longer silent, it was mandatory. The Supreme Court upheld that provision that it was mandatory and jurisdictional, but it was unpublished. It later came up again in 2023 in the Noakley case, in which it absolutely left no doubt this provision must be enforced. And recently in Joran, Section 1 of this statute was found that not even the mailbox rule applies to, meaning that if it got mailed to you, you didn't get the 3 days. I have believed, as someone who lived this, that the more information we can get these people, the more likely it is they will not violate these provisions. And what this bill is designed to do is put out, and as I put in the slide, the solution is it conforms it to the Supreme Court language, mainly in Noakley, but it also incorporates parts from Chopra and Joran. And specifically, I wanted to do this for the clarity for the attorneys, the judges, and everybody involved, but mostly our claimants. This is the number one reason that they get dismissed. And it's the number one reason they get dismissed because most of them look at a different statute or they get told wrong information or things like that. And the Supreme Court has laid down that this is basically absolute at this point. And I think the more you put in the statute to let people know that, the less mistakes will be made. And the other thing I would note is in all of Chopra, Noakley, Joran, Otto, and the rest, Spar in particular, these are all mistakes made by attorneys. So I would also argue for those of us that are attorneys, it's right there in the statute. You don't have to go looking for it. And it gives them the opportunity to serve their clients better. But mainly with our claimants, many of them are self-represented. Many of them don't have resources, and virtually none of them are legally trained. So I believe that putting this in the statute as in black and white as we could, based on the case law, was the best way to go. With that, I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you for your presentation, committee members. Are there any questions? Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, and appreciate the legal history on this, and it's one of the reasons that we get CLE credit for serving in the legislature. So I just wanted to make sure I understand it. So essentially, I mean, given I was here during the 2020 special session, but that does feel like a lifetime ago, to be quite honest. We clarified this provision, but what's been happening is attorneys have been trying to kind of get around it trying to litigate it, and to this point, every court has said, no, the 45 days matters. And so what you're trying to do is just be abundantly clear in the statute so that hopefully we avoid needless litigation by attorneys trying to challenge a provision that so far, even though some of those were unpublished opinions, they've all been sort of shot down on that attempt. So just wanted to make sure that that's kind of what we're doing here. We're not really changing anything. We're just kind of putting it in black and white so everybody knows.
I would, Madam Chair, Troy Jordan for the record to the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, that's exactly what it is, and I would echo your sentiment 1,000% is that we're clarifying, getting it codified, and we're not changing any laws. The law is already in place per the case law. We're just putting the case law into the statute so it's easier to find, especially for someone who's unrepresented and not legally trained.
Committee members, any questions? I don't see any. Thank you for this bill. I think the more clarity that we can have, like you said, especially for our claimants that are not represented, the better. So thank you. We will move on to support testimony. Okay. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 12? You may begin when you're ready. Remember to state and spell your name.
Thank you, Chair Marzola and committee members. Misty Grimmer, Grimmer, representing the Nevada Resort Association. As the state's largest employers, we also appreciate the agency putting very clear deadlines into statute so that everybody knows the situation. And also, as I said in the Senate committee this morning, we also appreciate all the work that the agency does during the interim to address these issues and then bring them back to you so that we all know what the rules are and to keep the system up to date and modernized.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, SCHNEIDER, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. I'd just like to echo the comments of my colleague here, as well as thank the folks at DETR for taking a couple minutes to meet with us. We do appreciate the clarification on this process and timeline. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else in Carson City, and it looks like everyone has left us in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
To testify in support of Assembly Bill 12, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working. There are no callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. We will now move to opposition. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in opposition?
Jamie Cogburn on behalf of the Nevada Justice Association, JAMIE, Cogburn, COGBURN. As a little more background on the legal process, the Noakley case that was talked about was a pro se, and the problem with the pro ses and adding the stuff to law is the 45 days when they're filed, the pro ses also usually move to have free filings. And they're petitioning the court to say, hey, I can't afford the filing fee, which is why I'm here, because I'm unemployed, and trying to overturn that ruling. So they're waiting also to serve these documents and to serve it on DETR. At the same time, they're waiting for approval to proceed in essentially a pro bono setting within the court where you don't have to pay filing fees. And the Supreme Court mentioned that in the Noakley case. That was what actually happened. There really is no need for clarification. What there is a need for is to extend the 45 days. DETR is here to help people, and this is the most trying time. And very few petitions get filed with the court. To have it kicked out on essentially a technicality because you served it on the 46th day instead of the 45th day, especially when it's usually proper persons, somebody representing themselves without legal training, they should be decided on the merits. We should be trying to help the people, not put more fences up on getting their case dismissed. And with that, the NJ would object.
Thank you for being with us today. Is there anyone else here in Carson City in opposition? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 12? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 12, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We will move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to give neutral testimony to Assembly Bill 12? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 12, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Would you like to give any final remarks?
Madam Chair, Troy Jordan again for the record. I have no final remarks other than to say thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 12. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 21. This measure revises provisions relating to unemployment compensation. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon again. My name is David Schmidt. I'm the Chief Economist for the Research and Analysis Bureau. And in a previous life, I did a lot of work working with the unemployment insurance system, as well calculating the solvency of the system, helping with the annual rate setting process. So Assembly Bill 21 has two sections, which can sort of be considered in isolation, and that's how I will work through it today. Section 1 of the bill deals with a particular solvency formula that exists in statute. This is in NRS 612-550 Section 7, and unfortunately math in statute is particularly challenging, but essentially what this bill does is it removes a formula that exists in that section of the bill and cleans up some additional language defining terms that only exist for the sake of that formula. Can go on to the next slide. So this solvency formula ultimately tries to calculate how much you might pay in unemployment benefits in a year. When I say solvency, really this is sort of a term of art to say, do you have enough money? What defines enough money? This is sort of a potentially vague term. The problem with this formula is that it isn't incredibly effective at doing that. The formula was originally tied to the imposition of an additional tax on employers. It would push up their unemployment tax rates when the trust fund fell below a certain balance. That tax was eliminated in 1983 with SB 340, and this formula has existed in statute, just saying do the calculation and then nothing else. The issue that this causes is that, as I said, it's not a very good formula. It has a few problems. It looks back the last 10 years for the worst moments that you've had in two different measures, and then tries to update it for current events, current employment, current wages, or current benefits that are being paid. Because of the way it's calculated, it tends to be too low before a recession. It's saying you need less money than you probably do. And after a recession, it exaggerates and it jumps up very quickly. And so it's very volatile. And so for long-term planning, it's not a very good formula, because if you were trying to hit the target before a recession, you would be underprepared. And if you were trying to hit the target after a recession, you would be putting additional burdens on employers as they are trying to recover. That's ultimately the biggest problem with this formula. So we can go to the next slide. If it were eliminated, how would we look at solvency? Currently, we use a different measure instead. The formula that exists in statute, as I said, is kind of discretionary. We do the calculation, but there is no and then what after it. It says do the calculation and then stops. So when we present to the Employment Security Council, to the Employment Security Division, and say, here's what we might want to prepare for, we already use a measure that the federal government has defined, which is the average high cost multiple. This is a better way of measuring things because it eliminates the multiplying two different things together, which can make the current formula more volatile. It looks back for a longer period of time, either 20 years or enough time to include the last 3 recessions. And so the current formula, because it only looks back 10 years period, we've had economic expansions that have lasted 10 or more years. And this is why the current formula drops before a recession is the last recession has already been forgotten. And so that's why it underprepares. Using this measure would basically keep us looking out longer. And again, that's something that we already do on a discretionary basis. This bill does not address that, but this is to answer what is it that we're already doing anyway? What's the alternative or the replacement? This table shows the history of this measure, how it's calculated, the measures that are defined in statute. We multiply them all together and get the number that's the bottom row of those blue tables. And you can see how going from just prior to the COVID recession to just after, we went from a recommendation of $1.5 billion to $1.2 billion, and now it's at $8.2 billion. $8.2 billion, for context, is roughly 3 times what we actually paid out during the COVID recession. Much, much, much more than the worst thing that we've ever experienced when we had 30% unemployment. It's not a good formula because it's taking 2 different things and applying them in a way that exaggerates the potential need for the trust fund. In short, eliminating this formula in Section 1 of the bill would ensure that right now we have the experience. We know what the formula does. We know to kind of ignore it. What about 10 years from now, 20 years from now? I wouldn't want someone to try to follow this math and be ill-prepared for a recession beforehand and then putting a huge burden on employers right after we've gone through a recession. Section 2 of AB 21 is a very different thing, but it's also kind of a technical adjustment. The Unemployment Compensation Administration Fund is the career enhancement program. You heard Administrator Nelson talk about what we've done with this program earlier. You heard the director talk about some of the uses of this fund. This is a 0.05% additional assessment that is paid by employers at the same time that they're paying their regular unemployment insurance contributions. Unemployment insurance contributions are on each employee's wages paid by the employer up to a certain dollar amount. And so currently, it's a neighborhood of $40,000. So the first $40,000 of someone's wages is subject to this tax, and everything after that, both for unemployment and the career enhancement program, is no longer taxed as you move through the year. Employers report quarterly, and so for the first quarter, January through March, employers file the reports by the end of April. This money comes in end of April, middle of May. Because of the cap on wages that are reported, there is a seasonality to these collections. The first month's collections in the second calendar quarter of the year, or the 4th fiscal quarter of the year, is the largest of the year. Typically, we see about a third of the money that comes into this revenue pot ends up being collected in that period. But when you are in a time when wages are rising more rapidly, you hit that cap sooner, and an even larger share of the contributions that are collected comes in that last quarter. The challenge this poses is that there's another provision in statute that says for the money that is collected for this program, anything that is not obligated 90 days after into the next fiscal year has to be reverted to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. This is a shame because $500,000 in workforce services is a much more effective use of money than $500,000 sitting in the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, where we pay out $10 million a week in benefits. I believe the intent of this is to keep the money from just accumulating. It requires the money to go out the door. But if we can go on to the next slide here, and I think I already talked through this one. 90 days is a short amount of time between when money is coming in because we don't know what we will collect until we get it from employers. And so if you have a bit of an overage, you end up in a bit of a race to obligate this money, to get through the contracting process, the purchasing process, to identify where could this money be spent well and get the necessary approvals to then obligate and spend it before you are 90 days into the next fiscal year. So Section 2 of AB 21 simply changes that 90-day period to a 180-day period. Gives an additional 3 months to go through the process to identify the best way to spend the money and get it properly obligated and appropriated so that it still is hitting the streets. We just have a little bit more time to plan how to spend it well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions? Assemblymember Urick.
Thank you, Chair. You know, as I read the bill and specifically at Section 2, was curious about that carryover provision and owning my own business, sometimes that year in and maintaining cash flow for the beginning of the next. I was kind of under the assumption that that's what we were doing, just trying to maintain a positive cash flow through the early part of the year. But it sounds like you have like a different issue with it and that it's, so I guess I'm just going to get straight to my question because I'm just trying to understand this. So is the issue that we're trying to pre-fund and maintain positive cash flow through the first quarter, which would be that 90 days? Or like, do you have an annual budget that you set that goes through the whole year and this is just kind of funding the beginning of that? Or I guess ultimately what I'm getting at is if we can fund next year's off of this 0.05% tax on businesses for literally half the next year, is that incorporated into the annual budget, or is this an addition, and are we potentially, it begs the question, are we potentially overtaxing our businesses if we can maintain our operating budget and pre-fund next year half the year? I'm sorry, it's kind of all over, but does that make sense?
Yes, David Schmidt for the record, and I would say it's slightly different than that because as long as we have the obligations and the plan to spend the money, we go through the budgeting process and identify how this will be spent, and so there's not a problem when you know what you're going to be spending. The issue comes when maybe because we don't know what the actual revenues will be until they come in the door in May, if there's more money than is expected. It will go to one of two things. It'll be spent by the CEP program, it'll be obligated and expended and we'll have a plan for it, or it will revert to the trust fund. This is not something that happens very often, but it's more a point of if we had that extra $500,000, is it better for that to, we had an upside surprise, is it better for that to be spent on workforce programs where instead of okay, is there something we can augment? We'll just bump it up by another $500,000 so that it hits the streets versus reverting to the trust fund. So it's a little bit more time to, hey, there was a little bit of a surprise, how can we make sure we're spending that well? So it's not a cash flow for the whole program, but rather, how can we deal with an upside surprise to make sure that we're planning and we have time to go through that purchasing, contracting, approval, IFC process.
Great, thank you for clarifying that for me. And I think you answered what my follow-up question was going to be, but it sounds like you're saying it's not a real common thing. It's not like every year we've got this massive amount of money that we're trying to figure out new ways to spend it. It's just occasionally it is in excess and we want to keep those resources in the fund that it would be most appropriately used. Is that a correct understanding?
David Schmidt for the record, yes.
Committee members, any questions? I don't see any. So we will open up for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 21. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Andrew McKay. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Franchise Auto Dealers Association. I'm going to keep my remarks really brief. However, I want to dovetail off the comments made earlier by Ms. Grimmer and Mr. Schneider and give a shout out to Dieter. They're wonderful to work with. They always reach out to us. They're an amazing resource for the association and our respective dealer members. And this is a perfect example. They reached out to us on this. So just wanted to put that out there. I think, you know, in short, this brings common sense to the long-term planning with respect to the trust fund solvency. And then obviously, you know, this helps minimize the volatility of the measurement. And so obviously anything that you can do to create, I guess, for lack of a better term, a little bit of predictability is a good thing, and we support the measure. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can I get you to spell your name, please? I didn't remind you because I know you've been here a lot.
No, that's my fault. I forgot I haven't testified in front of the committee yet. It's Andrew. Last name is McKay, Mackay. Thanks, Madam Chair. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you so much. It's the beginning of session. I get it. Anyone else here in Carson City? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify? No, he's waving his hands. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 21?
Testify in support of Assembly Bill 21, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. We'll move to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 21. Is there anyone here in Carson City? I don't see any. Is there anyone in Las Vegas? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 21, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We'll move to neutral. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 21? I don't see any. I don't see anyone walking up in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
To testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 21, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, would you like to give any closing remarks?
For the record, Chris Sewell, I'm not going to do my Dave Schmidt impression. Thank you very much for listening to the bill. I think it does help us with planning, and so that way it just makes it better, so that way we can put money into the workforce system when our trust fund is actually fairly solvent right now, and we're actually in really good shape. We do appreciate your consideration on this bill. And I'm going to do a squirrel here real quick, and I should have said something in my prior presentation. Concerning our NUI system and the rollout of benefits, the benefits side, I will offer any one of your members an opportunity to see a demonstration when we get that in the summer, and whether that's up here in the north or in the south in Las Vegas, because I think that will also help you. So we will provide a demonstration once that is situated. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 21. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 68. This measure revises provisions relating to housing. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I was wondering who was in the back of the room.
Well, you know us in the Treasury, we're just always lurking around. Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and member of the committee. For the record, I'm Zach Conine. I have the honor of serving as Nevada's 23rd State Treasurer. It is so great to be here this afternoon to present about 60 slides on Dieter. Oh, no, wait, we don't need to do that again. To present Assembly Bill 68, which we believe will be a tremendous step in ensuring that Nevada's renters have a pathway to homeownership and financial security. Before I get started, I want to thank all the individuals and organizations who have got us to this point. First, and up at the table in Carson City, SEIU Local 1107, the largest healthcare and public service union in Nevada, representing nearly 20,000 workers. SEIU has put in a massive amount of effort on this bill. I'm immensely grateful for their efforts. Next, our friends at the ACLU of Nevada and the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada for working with us to make sure we can strengthen the bill to ensure that the rights of tenants are protected wherever possible. Then the allied organizations and labor unions who are here today to testify in support of the bill, who work in the trenches to really move our state forward. And finally, organizations like the Realtors, the Apartment Association, and our housing partners at Ovation and Nevada Hand for continuing to work with us to make this bill stronger going forward. I want to take a moment also to introduce Eric Jimenez, our Chief Policy Deputy, who is at the table in Carson City. As you all on the committee know, Nevada is home to a large number of renters, which comprise over 42% of all households. A monthly rent payment is one of the largest expenses that workers and families have to make each and every month. Yet, unfortunately, thousands of renters across our state do not receive the same amount of credit for making those payments as homeowners do for making their monthly mortgage payments. We know that having a good credit score is one of the biggest components in allowing an individual to obtain a mortgage or to purchase large items like a car or to start a new business. However, many tenants across Nevada suffer from lower credit scores simply because they don't have the established credit history as reported to credit agencies. Of course, we in the Treasury know a lot about credit scores, getting Nevada's credit rating raised 3 times to its current highest level ever. Simply put, reporting is the process by which rental payments are reported to credit agencies like Equifax, Experian, and others. The process allows landlords and property management companies the ability to track payment history for tenants. Additionally, rent reporting also provides tenants with an opportunity to build upon their existing credit score. By having their positive rental payments reported, tenants can demonstrate to lenders when they go to purchase their first home that they can make payments on time, thereby reducing the riskiness and associated interest rates for their mortgage. Broadly, AB 68 is focused on a singular goal, ensuring that tenants have a voluntary option to choose to have their positive rental payments reported to credit agencies to help boost their credit score. We firmly believe that by providing this option to tenants, we can create additional pathways to homeownership and thereby the middle class for thousands of tenants who are punished on their credit scores simply because they chose to rent an apartment. Before we walk through the provisions of the bill, Chair, I'd like to pass it off to Todd Inglesby with SEIU Local 1107 to highlight just why this bill is so important to Nevada's working families. Todd?
Committee. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Committee. Todd Inglesby, representing SEIU. Just want to thank you for taking the time to have this hearing today to bring this important legislation. I want to thank Treasurer Conine, Eric, and all their team for working hard, specifically with our housing authority members, to really make sure that we're really looking out for all our folks in our state who are renters, to help them establish the credit they need to fulfill their dream of owning a home or becoming financially secure. And we want to thank you and wish your support on this legislation.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Eric Jimenez for the record. I'll just do a quick walk through the bill just for the committee's benefit. It's a short bill. I know Speaker Yeager likes to do the long, big ones, but we prefer the short and sweet ones. But Section 1 of this bill requires applicable landlords to provide written notice to tenants, allowing them to voluntarily opt in to reporting positive rental payments to a credit agency. This notice is required to be provided to the tenant at the time they sign their initial lease and at least annually thereafter. Additionally, Section 1 prescribes that the written notice given by the landlord must include the following information. 1, language that participation from the tenant is completely optional. 2, the name of each consumer credit reporting agency that their positive rental payments will be reported to. 3, instructions on how to voluntarily participate in the credit reporting process. And then 4, a statement that the tenant may choose to stop the reporting of positive payments at any time, but that if they wish to resume those payments, they would need to wait a period of 6 months. And that's largely just to make sure that the landlord is not constantly signing people up for credit reporting, taking them down, signing them up. So just kind of giving a little bit of space for that. Additionally, in subsection 6 of Section 1, if a tenant chooses to voluntarily participate in credit reporting, the landlord is authorized to impose a small monthly fee if necessary that cannot exceed $10 per month. However, and I would note that most of the credit reporting services that are offered are actually free to landlords. So if that is the case, the landlord is not eligible to charge that fee to the tenant. So I think as the market continues to expand, we're very cognizant that we want to keep any sort of fees to tenants low and, if at all possible, not give them any fees at all. And then finally, subsection 9 of section 1 prescribes what types of landlords are required to provide this notice to tenants. We were very careful in making sure that while we want to make sure that all renters, if we can, have the option to do this, sometimes with these single unit landlords, it becomes a little more arduous for that process. So under this bill, the landlords are required to comply if they have more than 15 units, and if they have a different type of corporate structure, like a REIT or a real estate investment trust, or they're structured as a corporation or an LLC where at least one member is a corporation. And with that, Madam Chair, happy to stop talking and see if there's any questions on the bill.
Thank you. I do have a question, but so do several of my members. We will start with Assembly Member Miller.
Thank you so much, Chair. And my question is regarding the possibilities under number 6 for the additional fee that could be charged to renters. And with that, because it doesn't seem as specific, so I'll also need some understanding around this. So it says that a renter could be charged up to $10 if there's a charge imposed for the actual reporting on a monthly basis, which I didn't realize that was, but it makes sense that there could be a cost. And so is there also a cost when a landlord or owner reports someone who is not paying their rent? Is there also a monthly cost for that? Because we know, we're trying to rectify and actually do the opposite of, so when someone is not paying the rent and it's been put on their credit report, does that cost the landlord monthly?
And Mr. Treasurer, I'm happy to take that. Erica Menace for the record. I think 2 things. As this bill is drafted, it is only contemplating positive payments. So if there was any sort of lack of payment, I think there is some conversation that we are having with folks in the industry on kind of like whether that makes sense or it should be a little more holistic. But as it's drafted today, it's only including positive payments. And then secondly, on that fee, there is no additional cost to the landlord on a positive payment side and or a missed payment side. So if this were to become a little more holistic, there would be no more increased cost on the tenant or the landlord.
Chair, may I restate my question? Thank you. Yes, I understand that this is solely for positive reporting. I might be trying to make a point, which is, do owners have to pay for negative when someone is not paying their rent? Is there a fee imposed then?
And I will let the treasurer correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe there is. But I'm sure someone from the industry can correct me if I'm wrong.
Chair, I may have another question later.
You can go. Do you want to go ahead and ask it now? Or do you want to? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the indulgence, Chair. My next question with that, because this is such a benefit for renters, but I want to make sure there's not more fees imposed on renters. And so the next one is, I know that there's choices when it comes to which credit report. We know there's the 3 main companies that seem pretty universal and commercial. But if a landlord or an owner does decide and is participating in this program, and there may be a fee that comes to the owner, so that could be maybe transferred down to the renter. But it also seems that the renter doesn't necessarily have, or will the renter have, some opportunity to choose which credit port is, where their credit is reported.
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. I think a really interesting question that I don't think we contemplated. I think as the bill is drafted, and we're going to be working on some sort of an amendment, but I think as the bill is drafted,
Can you please state your name for the record?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Eric Jimenez for the record. One day I'll get that right, Madam Chair. But I think we are we wanted to give landlords at least some ability of choice in the marketplace if for some reason there was a credit reporting system that worked better for them, since we are asking for a mandate for large landlords to do that. So I do think some consumer choices is important. I think there could definitely be some disclosure language, or as we look at some of the kind of prescriptive language on what the notice has to be. We know that we have kind of what the credit reporting agency is. I think we should be thinking about fees from that too. I think also something we could explore is if there's a most cost-effective option for the tenant. I think that would be something I think all of the interested parties would be interested in exploring.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Speaker Yeager.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. I think they're all really quick, though, if you don't mind. So, number one, I thought this was a really interesting bill, and I just wondered, has this been tried somewhere else, or is this like a first-in-the-nation thing that we're trying to do here?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker. Eric Jimenez for the record. It has been tried somewhere else. There are a number of other states, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but this bill was modeled after a bill that passed and has been successfully implemented in the state of California. Additionally, I was speaking with our friends at Legal Aid yesterday, and there's been some research from some of the consumer protection legal organizations on like how you can structure this to make sure that tenants are protected, and this bill contains those protections so that it's opt-in, that there's adequate disclosures, and there's obviously, I will just say for the record, and you didn't ask this, there is a level of risk, right? If a tenant does choose to opt into something like this, they should know what that level of risk is, but we do think it's important to give people options to kind of move out of renting and kind of move out of poverty.
Could I ask a
And
follow-up?
Speaker, if I could.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Treasurer.
Sorry, if I could just add to that for a brief second. This is also driven by work that's been done by Senator Cortez Masto with the Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco in order to allow these credit payments to be used for home mortgages that are then bought out by Fannie, Freddie, and the other FHA entities, right? So this allows for the majority of mortgages in Nevada are, of course, FHA mortgages, and they are now taking credit scores like this in order to make those decisions. But until those credit scores exist, they can't take them. And so our goal here is to sort of fill the pipeline with potential renters who could be homeowners.
Could I ask a follow-up? The other question I had, I guess I hadn't really thought about it until I read this bill, but I guess I sort of just assumed that people are already reported this stuff to credit reporting agencies. And the question that I had is, how does a landlord develop a relationship with a credit reporting agency if they don't already have that? Like, can anybody just report something to a credit reporting agency? And if that's too technical or better offline, that's fine as well. I just wondered, if these folks don't already have these relationships, how does that get established with these agencies?
Treasurer Conan, for the record, it's relatively easy, and we're certainly happy to work with any landlord who needs help with the introductions.
One follow-up, one last question. The other question I had was, I know you limited the bill to essentially larger or more sophisticated landlords, but would a smaller landlord be able to participate in this if they wanted to? If a tenant asked and they wanted to do it, is there any preclusion from smaller folks doing this as well?
Thank you.
Treasurer Conan, for the record. Go ahead, Eric, if you'd like.
I'll just take it.
Good to say your name.
Yep, Eric Jimenez for the record. Since I interrupted you, I will just continue the thought. There is no preclusion on a landlord doing this now. For example, I'm a renter today, and my landlord voluntarily offered this program to participate, and I chose to because it seemed like a good idea. So I think there's a little bit of education that would have to happen, Mr. Speaker, but we would be more than happy to be as communicative as possible to as many landlords as possible.
Assemblymember Kasama.
Thank you, Chair, and interesting bill. I do have a lot of questions. So I certainly work with property management and tenants and owners, and it seems to me with certainly the section here under 1 that we're going to be reporting the good payment history of the tenant. But right now, for example, I know for many of the property managers, they're not reporting either, not reporting good or bad. If they're late 5 days or 7 days, they're not reporting that. So it seems to me if we start this, and if, let's say, if a tenant has a good rental history for 6 months, and then they're falling behind, that now we would also report that, where in the past we haven't done that, because now we're reporting on a monthly basis. So now we're going to have to report the whole year's behavior. And then my question is, how would the credit agencies handle that information? Has there been any conversation with them? How are they going to handle monthly reporting that could go back and forth? And it seems to me it would be easier if you made it more like a employment verification, where somebody could just request from a landlord what has been the history of the tenant over the last terms of their lease, versus this seems like a burden on owners and property managers with all of this reporting going back and forth, that it would increase. It's more than just $10, their staff time. What happens if you manage hundreds of properties and they're all comprised of small mom and pop agencies? That's a lot of staff time for the property managers to accommodate all of this reporting on it. Looks to me like a monthly basis back and forth. And so my main question is, do you even know how the credit agencies would respond to different reporting every month for the same person? Has anybody talked to them
Treasurer
about
Conine,
that?
for the record. Absolutely, Assemblywoman, or Assembly Member, and I can take the first part or the second part, and then I'll pass back to Eric for the first part. Credit agencies currently take in information on a second-by-second basis. If you or I walk into a store and max out our credit cards, will show up on our credit history in about 20 hours. This is information that exists in real time, right? So from a credit agency reporting perspective, they're able to take it kind of as quickly as possible. And what we've seen in other states where this is required is the larger agencies, the larger landlords are functionally just tied in, right? So their rental system is kicking out reports digitally to the credit rating agencies. It's just integrated, right? And the reason why we wanted to start with landlords with more than 15 units, even though we expect that some with less than 15 units might be interested, is to really focus on landlords that have back offices, right? Landlords that have someone who's managing their accounts receivable book, has this information on hand, and could input this information relatively quickly. We can certainly get into the nitty-gritty of how different credit reporting agencies, sort of by their definition, have different reporting mechanics, but they're all relatively similar, either direct integration or CSV, comma separated value uploads. Eric, can I pass back to you for the other question?
I think you covered it. Eric Jimenez for the record. But if we didn't, we're happy to continue answering your questions.
Follow-up, Chair? I understand that the reporting could be done immediate and that the credit bureaus accept that, but do we know how is this going to actually affect the tenant's credit if it's, 6 months good and 6 months bad? Are they just looking at the last 2 months reported that were bad history? Or is the credit bureau going to aggregate the last 12 months? Do we know how it's actually going to impact their credit score?
Yeah, Treasurer Conine, for the record, and I think the concept of rental reporting is pretty young, right? But what we generally see in credit reporting is that value is placed on different types of credit and different types of debt that is owed, right? So if you owe a bunch of money in student loans, that impacts your credit score less than, say, a bunch of money on credit cards, and kind of those are the two extremes. Everything else falls in the middle. Debt that is owed or payments that are missed or late matter based on how late the payment is and how big the payment is, right? Did you miss a $5 payment by 1 day? That is less bad than if you miss a $500 payment by 30 days, right? And the credit agencies, all credit scores are created by a relatively complex algorithm that takes all of these moving parts and uses it to create a measure of risk, right? The higher your credit score is, the less risk you are from a credit perspective. The lower your credit score is, the lower risk you are from a credit perspective. Let's just take, say, the state of Nevada, right, who's a very good credit score, and compare it to another state. The one where Chicago is. right? They have a much lower credit score. And so we're able to borrow money more cheaply than they are because we are more likely to be able to pay it back. It works the same way for individuals' credit scores. And so the agencies, right, the agencies that are using those scores, Fannie, Freddie, et cetera, a mortgage servicer, someone who's originating a mortgage, is able to actually see where that credit score comes from. They don't just see a number, they see all the moving parts to it. And so they'd be able to say, okay, this person was able to pay rent, in your example, for 6 months, and they weren't able to pay rent for 6 months, and then they were able to pay rent. And what does that mean? And is that a risk that we're willing to take on, right? The point of credit scores is that it gives tenants who are paying their rent the opportunity to be successful by being able to prove the good work that they've done, sort of by nature, right? That's not binary. It's not if you have a credit score of 800, you get the house, and if you have a credit score of 799, you don't. Treasurer Conine for the record.
Thank you. We'll move to Assemblymember Cole.
Sorry about that. Yes, so my question was just, are there other alternatives that we could use? Just looking online, I quickly could see that a tenant, if they choose to, they could actually do the reporting or request the reporting now. I guess it's self-reporting maybe, for a certain fee or even for free on Experian Boost. And so I'm just wondering if perhaps an alternative is to request that landlords in their lease provide information as to that self-reporting mechanism, and then they can choose which credit bureaus they report to, and it's on their own. Because one of my concerns is I actually have a good friend of mine who is, they've escaped from a bad relationship, and they would not want their information to be disclosed to anyone as to where they're living.
Treasurer Conine for the record. I appreciate that. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that this was an optional program from a tenant perspective is just that, right? I mean, there are individuals for dozens of reasons who wouldn't want that information to be public to the extent that it's public within a credit report. Self-reported credit is valued less than externally reported credit for reasons that I think are relatively obvious, right? If I tell you I'm a good person, that's probably less effective than someone else telling you I'm a good person. I am telling you that, just so for the record. Treasurer Conine, thank you.
Vice Chair Howdigi.
Thank you. And thank you for being here and presenting the bill. And I read the bill and I thought I understood it, but now I think I have more. Now I think I'm a little unclear. So I just have a couple clarifying questions. And so, so a tenant could elect to do this at the beginning of their lease agreement because the information should be provided in the lease agreement, correct? So like they have to offer it at the beginning and then offer it once a year. And so if the tenant elects to do it at the beginning of the lease agreement and then the landlord starts reporting, if halfway through the one-year contract, the tenant falls on hard times and stops making their payment, so then that full year of rental history will be reported, the good and the bad.
I'll take that one. Eric Jimenez for the record. So as the bill is currently drafted, Assemblywoman or Assemblymember, I got to get my pronouns better, but this bill only contemplates positive payments right now. So let's say, for example, a tenant falls within hard times. It only reports positive payments to the credit agencies. I think that's an area that we're going to have a conversation with the industry of like what makes sense to be included. But also, I think there's an important provision in the bill is that the tenant has the ability at any time to cancel. So let's say that they've decided they're going to opt in, and maybe they do fall between hard times or they don't like it or anything like that. They can cancel at any time without any penalty if they would like to.
Okay, thank you. And I was thinking about that, and I thought that's what it meant, and so I started thinking about it in my head what that would look like, and I think that would be like a little obvious too on a credit report. Like if we're trying to report the positive, I'm thinking like if another landlord sees it and they're like, well, they were reporting good credit history for 6 months, and then there was no credit history for 6 months, and then there was good credit history for 3 months, and then there's no credit history. Like I'm wondering what that would look like. Like I'm wondering if that would be very obvious that this tenant obviously didn't pay their rent this month, and that's why there's no reporting. And then I'm just bringing that up because I'm thinking like, hey, that might get to what you're not trying to get to in the bill, right? That might be against what you're trying to accomplish in the bill. And then I just have one more question on Section 9, just because I know we have a lot of these types of units in like the downtown Las Vegas areas where it defines like who would be responsible for sending out these letters and who would fall under the jurisdiction of this bill. So we have a lot of co-ops in downtown Las Vegas, which are shared ownerships, right? So there might be more than 15 units on a property, and they're all owned by one entity, but they're all also owned by multiple people, where one person might own, there might be 20 units on the property, and one person might own 3 units, but they would fall under this definition because there's 15 units on one property under shared ownership under a co-op. So with co-ops, like, how would that be impacted by this bill?
I'll take that one, Eric Jimenez for the record. I think as the bill is drafted, Assembly Member, I think it would depend on the corporate structure as it's defined in 9 sub B. But I think it's a really interesting point and like something we'd be totally happy to explore of how co-ops were treated. I think, you know, what would be helpful to us, at least from the membership of the committee, is, you know, like what types of units would you like to see included, or what types might be a little more challenging, and that could give us some direction.
Assemblymember Carter.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to get something clarified in my head, that you talked about how the renter can turn it on and turn it off. Isn't that only the positive side? Because the landlord could still report the negative side even if the tenant had turned it off, or am I wrong there?
Thank you for the question, Assembly Member. I think as this bill is drafted, it does not contemplate negative payments. So the tenant would have never have opted in to having any sort of negative payment reported, if that makes sense. So like the landlord couldn't go above and beyond and report things that the tenant didn't authorize.
So you're telling me that this bill, if somebody signed up for it, then landlords would not be allowed to report negative reports if they told them not to?
Thank you for the question, Assembly Member. I'm saying that if this bill was amended to say all payments, that would be the case, but at least as it's drafted today, that negative or non-payment or negative payments would not be reported. And like I've said before, I think we are exploring amendments on kind of like what that would look like. I think we are committed to making sure the whole picture is kind of in this perspective, but I think it's also very clear that we don't want landlords to go and be above and beyond what tenants are noticed for, what tenants agree to. So I think we can have a conversation about like what that looks like. But I am a little uncomfortable if we provide landlords with the ability to go above and beyond that and report potentially other information.
Can you state your
And
name for
Treasurer
the record, please?
Kuhn,
Thank you, Eric Jimenez.
that was Eric Jimenez. Treasurer Conan, for the record, just to add on to that, because many of us are lawyers, but I'm not a real estate lawyer. Of course, the tenant could still, through the contract, through the original lease, make the agreement that their payment, positive or negative, was being reported, right? And just like in many other situations where the tenant is, or an individual is being extended credit, right? If they agree to the release of that information, that would be provided now, right? That we know that there are landlords that report negative information from tenant payments or evictions, et cetera, currently, right? So that might already exist. This bill doesn't contemplate it.
Assemblymember, are you good, Carter? Assemblymember Carter? Okay. Are there any additional questions? Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try to make it easy or quick, but I am thoroughly confused. Let me see if I understand this correctly. Because I've been here for a couple sessions, and I know we've had bills that say, do not report tenants' payment schedule that would be negative because it disadvantages certain ethnic groups or social economic groups. So don't report that stuff, but now by choice report good stuff. believe it or not, I was young for years and rented for years. I never had a problem getting credit. I paid my rent. Apparently it wasn't reported one way or the other, but I had other credits going on too, plus a work history, et cetera. I never had a problem. Explain to me why this bill is necessary, because it seems to me it could be done anyways without a statute requiring it. I'm trying to find out where's the problem that this is looking to solve. If you could help me, please. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I'll take that one. Eric Jimenez for the record. So, Assemblyman, I hear you, but I would also say I think the world's changed a lot, especially in recent years. And as a renter myself, I could tell you how expensive it is to think. And for someone who doesn't, hadn't for years gotten credit for making every single rental payment on time, I think it's a disadvantage to say that just because you grew up in a certain household or a certain zip code, that you shouldn't have the same opportunities to kind of move up into home ownership because you don't have the same value of your credit score and things like that. And I think we do have data to back this up, which I'm happy to send, but we do see that people who do opt into these types of programs do see significant benefits to their credit scores. We see that some folks get scores up to 60 points higher just by participating in this program. That's the difference between qualifying for a mortgage and not. That's the difference between a $2,500 mortgage payment and a $2,200 mortgage payment, right? Which is sometimes the difference between people having to live in apartments for the rest of their life and really moving out to create general wealth and opportunity.
May I, Chair? I appreciate that statement, sir, but I'm also going to take it a little as insulting that it was because of where I lived and because of maybe advantages my parents gave me. When I went out on my own after college, I went and got a bank account. I paid bills. I was able to get a credit card with a very small ability. I mean, it was a small credit line, but I would use it. And the reason why I would use it is to build credit and work up. I was able to buy a car, pay for it. I worked and got my own credit, just as anybody else in this country has the ability to do. Would you agree with that? And that's my question. And after that, thank you very much for the time, Chair. I appreciate it.
Treasurer Conan, I'll take that one. Assembly member, no. I do not believe that is objectively the truth. In this country, the ability to get a credit card, the ability to get a mortgage, the ability to get a car loan, the ability to get the job that will enable you to do that is constrained by many factors, some of which you have control over and some of which you don't. Our goal is to, frankly, deal with the equity of where people start and the opportunities that they have presented to them. And that is not the same for every person in this conversation or every person on that dais or any person in the state of Nevada. It just isn't, objectively, mathematically. Treasurer Conan.
Thank you for your presentation, and I do have to say I respect what the Assembly member stated. However, I think that it does make a difference where you come from, what zip code you live in. It shouldn't be like that, but at the end of the day, it is. And as a person who, as everyone knows, came here from another country and family struggled, and I struggled as a single mom. It is not easy for everyone when you don't have a certain amount of money in your bank account. Can you do it? Yes, with a lot of struggles and hard work. And it's easier for some than others. And so I don't believe that it is the same across the board. I appreciate you guys being here today. And we will move for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 68. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in support?
Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Susie Martinez, and I am the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO, and we are in support of the bill. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Tia Smith, TIA-SMITH. I'm a policy attorney with the ACLU of Nevada, and we strongly support AB 68. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Annette Magnus, ANNETTE-MAGNUS, and I'm here today representing the Asian Community Development Council, also known as ACDC. We are in strong support of this bill. We thank Treasurer Conine and Eric Jimenez for bringing it, and we just want to reiterate that not every single community has the opportunity to build credit, and this is a great opportunity for those who need it. So thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify in support in Carson City? I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in support to Assembly Bill 68?
To testify in support for Assembly Bill 68, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to
Hello, Assembly members. My name is Paula Luna. That's Paula-Luna. I'm the Deputy Director with Battleborn Progress. For too long, hardworking Nevadans have consistently paid their rent on time and have been denied the opportunity to build credit. One of the most important tools for financial stability and home ownership. AB 68 is a common sense step towards fixing that. By ensuring rent payments are reported to credit bureaus, we can help families improve their credit scores, unlock better lending opportunities, and put home ownership within reach for more Nevadans. We fully support this bill because our largest monthly expense should work for you, not against you. Thank you, Treasurer Conine, for bringing this forward.
Broadcast, is there anyone else on the line?
Chair, there are no additional callers choosing to testify in support at this time.
Thank you. We will move to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 68. Is there anyone here in Carson City? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucia Maloney, Lucia-Maloney. Thank you, Chair and Committee, for the opportunity to speak in opposition of AB 68 as introduced. I'm a small business owner and Carson City resident, and I applaud you for working to address a regulatory gap that unnecessarily handicaps lower-income families and young adults who rent their homes and are working to grow their credit and live the American dream here in Nevada. According to consumerfinance.gov, payment history is the #1 factor for building a strong credit score. Unfortunately, Nevada's lack of regulatory guidelines ensuring timely credit reporting of rental payments for renters means that renters aren't seeing their credit score grow as it rightfully should. What makes a good regulation? It solves a problem, it's clear, it's enforceable, and it's fair. As introduced, AB 68 fails to directly solve the problem, as it requires ongoing and burdensome action by the renters themselves to see the benefits that this bill is trying to provide. It's also not fair in that not all renters will benefit, just those who win the rental lottery, in that their landlord qualifies and is required to report. It's not clear or enforceable. Renters have no readily accessible means of verifying whether their landlord is required to report their payment history. How would they know how many units their landlord owns? Who will monitor whether a landlord wasn't charged a fee to report, but charged the renter anyway? As introduced, it's unfair in that it's arbitrarily selected of which landlords are required to participate. Why should someone who incorporates into a Nevada LLC be required to credit report, but not someone who simply invests in property in their own name? How is it a differentiator for helping renters? I suspect that this is because historically, credit reporting was limited to agencies and businesses that fell into certain buckets. As I understand, the law has changed, and now landlords everywhere are allowed to report credit payments for renters. As introduced, AB 68 creates a perpetual burdensome back and forth of who should report. Do you want me to report? Will you please reimburse me for reporting? I can't evict you if you don't pay me for reporting.
Ma'am,
yes.
can you please wrap it up?
I am, yes, thank you. As introduced, AB 68 is good intentions fallen short. I respectfully request that we redraft this bill so it simply requires annual reporting of monthly payments by long-term renters, on time or otherwise. Required disclosure of reporting as required through this bill in the contract to lease. States that have regulated this reporting have seen fewer delinquencies. This is good for property owners too. This is a bipartisan issue that can benefit many Nevadans. Again, my name is Lucia Maloney. I'm opposed to AB 68 as introduced, but I'm hopeful that it can be modified so that we can see its benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas broadcast. Is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 68? And just as a reminder, it is 2 minutes.
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 68, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. We'll move to neutral testimony. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 68? Please remember to state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes each.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Marzola and members of the Committee of Commerce and Labor. For the record, I am Mindy Elliott, MENDYELLIOTT, with Flynn Judici Government Affairs on behalf of the Reno Housing Authority, Nevada Rural Housing Authority, and Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. We want to thank Treasurer Conine for bringing AB 68 and Eric Jimenez as we continue to identify a workable amendment that would exempt individuals, and I don't want to muddy the water, but I think I'm about to, that are receiving housing choice vouchers under USC 1437F and who are also receiving financial assistance from the other various rental assistance programs that are currently being offered, from the ability to request credit reporting on their behalf. Between the three entities, we are the largest landlords in the state, and we will continue to work with the treasurer and the team to craft an acceptable amendment, because we do understand the intent of what they're trying to do. My first credit was a American Eskimo Spitz for $100 named Putt Putt. I paid $15 a month for 6 months, and that established my credit in 1973. So thank you so much for your my ability to testify today. And again, we appreciate this AB 68. Thank you, Treasurer Conine. For the record, Mindy Elliott.
Chair Marzola, Vice Chair Howdigi, members Mackenzie Warren Kay, MACKENZIEWARRENKAY. Assemblymember Torres Fawcett can relate to all the letters to my name. I am here on behalf of Ovation Development, the Nevada Multifamily Alliance, as well as American Homes for Rent, all in the neutral position. We appreciate Treasurer Conine and Mr. Jimenez for reaching out to us. This work started actually prior to session. As my colleague, Ms. Elliott, indicated, we're working toward an amendment. We want to keep going there. My first credit card was from Ann Taylor, I think. Thank you very much. We'll continue to work the bill. Thank you, Treasurer.
Somehow I can see that. I still don't see anyone in Las Vegas broadcast. Is there anyone on the line wishing to testify in neutral?
To testify in neutral to Assembly Bill 68, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. This is Dora Martinez. I actually was trying to call in and testify in favor, Madam Chair, but I had a difficulty with the accessible website that Elsie Nellis is on. May I please proceed on support?
Yes, absolutely. We'll move back to support. Remember to state and spell your name.
Okay. DORAMARTINEZ, and I represent the Nevada Disability Peer Action Coalition, which is people with various disability, and I was I'm calling in to support some people who are disabled and like myself, who is blind, would really appreciate this. I wish it would have happened 10 years ago. It would have helped a lot, but I'm glad that it's here now. And I hope that, everybody works on their amendment, but this would really give a leg up for people with disability who are trying to have a good credit so they can obtain a house, because not all people with disability, cannot work. So I appreciate Mr. Eric Jimenez and Zach Conine for always doing the right thing. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. We will move back to testimony and neutral broadcast. Is there anyone on the line?
Hello, my name is Stephanie Hughes. I'm a proud member of SEIU 1107, and I would like to proceed in support of this bill. Is that okay?
Yes, we will move back to support. Please remember to state and spell your name. You have 2 minutes.
I apologize. My name is Stephanie Hughes, last name Hughes. I am in support of this bill. Not only am I a proud member of SEIU 1107, I am an employee of the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. This bill will empower more than half of our participants in building credit and becoming self-sufficient. I do know that I know that there are vendors out there that will take in consideration not only full rent payments, but in our case, where our participants don't always pay a full rent, they pay a portion of a rent. They will take in consideration their $6, their $50, or their $100 in rent payments. So once again, we are in full support of this bill, and we thank you.
Thank you. We will move back to neutral broadcast. Is there anyone on the line?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to testify in neutral at this time.
Thank you. Treasurer, would you like to give any final remarks?
Thank you, Chair. Not on the bill. I just wanted to take a moment to send our best wishes and all our love from the Treasury to Senator Neal as she recovers. Thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us today. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 68. I will now open up for public comment. Please address your remarks to issues that fall within the jurisdiction of this committee. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. Public comment may be submitted in writing to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. Please remember to state and spell your name. Is there any public comment here in Carson City? I don't see anyone here or in Las Vegas. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line wishing to give public comment?
Chair, there are no callers choosing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. Members, any comments? I don't see any. This will conclude our meeting for today. Our next meeting will be on Friday, February 21st at 1:30. This meeting's adjourned.